Emily Stuart is a registered dietitian. She works for Appetito and Wiltshire Farm Foods. She's been around quite a long while in the industry, and she's going to share some of her learning around finger food for people living with dementia, which I think we're going to find really interesting. So
Okay.
over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Could you just kindly let me know if everything looks okay with me?
It looks great.
And
We're on slideshow mode. It looks wonderful.
okay, there we go. I'll just switch to my presenter view, so hopefully that hasn't adjusted anything. So I'll get started.
No, that's fine.
Okay, lovely. Yeah, great. Thank you very much. So yeah, thanks for the introduction, Leslie. It's great to see so many familiar names and faces on the call today, and thank you so much for asking us to be involved and for the opportunity to share some of our work with you. So my name is Emily Stuart, and I'm the company dietitian for Appetito and Wiltshire Farm Foods. I'm going to be talking to you today about addressing nutritional challenges with specialist nutrition solutions. As some of you may definitely be aware, specialist nutrition is a huge part of what we do here at Appetito. So it's a pleasure to talk to you today in Malnutrition Awareness Week and share some of what we've been up to. So I am talking specifically around our finger food bites. So I will go on to tell you what that means. So it's in relation to people living with dementia, and I'm going to be talking around some of the reasons why that's useful for people living with dementia, for a wide variety of people. So it's not isolated to those people. So I'm going to be kicking off by talking a bit about the challenge, so some of the nutritional challenges that come with living with dementia, and then looking at our meals, looking at why we developed them and why we're proud of this innovation. I've got a couple of case studies, one of which is in relation to a care home group that we work with, and one is a more individual case study of somebody living in their own home who had moved on to having these meals and the benefits that they found from them. And of course, happy to answer any questions or share any resources that anyone might find useful. So let's get started. I'm just going to remove that, sorry. I got too much of my screen taken up. So let's get started with nutritional challenges in dementia. I'm only touching on a few here, really. I do believe you could have a whole presentation of the nutritional challenges linked to dementia, and it could take up a lot longer than 15 minutes. So I am just going to touch on a few. But as dementia progresses, the cognitive, behavioural, and physical changes that can occur can make eating and drinking increasingly challenging. These changes are linked with things like hypermetabolism, reduced energy intake, and greater physical activity, which can all lead to malnutrition. Widely speaking, we know that a healthy and balanced diet is vital to maintaining good physical and mental health. So a varied diet, a balanced diet, and a diet that somebody enjoys and can eat frequently. However, we also know that dementia can affect a person's ability to eat and drink well and meet their nutritional needs. On the table here, I've just got a few of those challenges that we see in moderate to severe dementia. So I'll just touch on a few of those and then expand a bit more detail on the next slides to then move on to addressing some of these challenges with solutions. So we've got dyspraxia and agnosia, so conditions that can result in people struggling to use cutlery, and that may be recognizing which hand the knife and fork should go in, not being able to complete the movement of having the cutlery on the plate and then completing it up to the mouth to be able to feed themselves. And then also recognizing common items that are previously were familiar to that person, and this can include food and drink. Concerns around behavior, around eating and drinking. I don't like to call it problems, but it's just what it tends to be referred to as. So this may include restlessness and impact on the amount of food that the person's able to consume. And then we've got dysphagia, and I won't be talking about dysphagia or modified food in this presentation, but it's just important to mention it because it's incredibly common among people living with dementia. We can see they're reported in up to 50. Really, the point here is to just highlight that the speech and language therapy assessment is essential for these people, as they are the healthcare professional dedicated to supporting this condition. So I just want to touch on a couple of the challenges I've just referred to in a bit more detail here, starting with the one linked to behaviour. Also, we may call wandering, walking with purpose, which is common in people living with dementia as they can lose their ability to recognise familiar places. They may also be restless and walk around at meal times, which, as I mentioned, can increase their energy expenditure. And if they're then not taking in the adequate calories needed and protein and other nutrients needed to maintain a good nutritional status, this can lead to poor nutrition. People may also struggle to sit for prolonged periods of times and can miss out on meal times as a result of this. Now, this isn't only going to impact the nutrition that they're losing potentially, but also the social occasion that could be lost as part of this. So socially, eating in a care home, for example, is incredibly important. That it can be a really pinnacle part of the day for residents living in a care home. So if you've got somebody who is to control that, then it can mean that social occasion is lost on a number of occasions. So we also have the coordination and dexterity challenges that I mentioned previously. So struggling to use a knife and fork, or struggling to feed themselves, which can mean that not only is it practically difficult and they may need support for that, but also can be quite messy and that person can lose their dignity. So lots of challenges here. The result also, not just focusing on nutrition, as I said, the result can be malnutrition as people living with dementia struggle to meet their nutritional needs. But also we have to acknowledge that this can be a major source of ill health and stress for people living with dementia, but also for their carers, for their loved ones and family members, and people supporting them with their dementia. So it's actually one of the most common clinical complications associated with dementia, eating and drinking. And those who develop malnutrition, there are lots of implications that can occur as a result of that, such as poor mobility and falls, increased hospital stays, more GP visits, more medication burden, impaired immune function. The list really does just go on. So, of course, as people working with people living with dementia, either directly or through companies such as the one that I work for, we want to be finding some solutions. Now, I am here to talk about finger foods today, but there are, other solutions, and I believe that finger foods is just, a part of that can work for some people. So some other examples of solutions may be enhanced flavors. So what can sometimes be seen is people living with dementia can start to favor flavors that they may not have enjoyed before. So for example, they may start to favor strongly flavored curries or sauces, herbs and spices that previously wouldn't have been a common part of their diet. The mealtime environment is also incredibly important to acknowledge. So, continuing with tactics such as limiting distractions, such as loud noises, using things such as brightly coloured plates and feeding aids if necessary, and of course using a resident-centred, person-centred care plan, and giving individuals sufficient time and support to eat their meal, and that will look different for everybody. Just touching on finger foods, which I'm going to go into more detail now and sort of share a bit about what we've been doing within Appetito and Wiltshire Farm Foods. What we've developed is foods that can be eaten on the move, and also remove that need for cutlery. So what you can see here in the picture of the food is actually one of the meals, and they're called finger food bites. And hopefully by the image you can see why that is. So what we've done is got a protein source, and whether that's fish, meat, vegetarian, but combined it with a sauce to put in that moisture that somebody may miss if they are eating traditional finger foods. And by traditional finger foods, I mean things like sandwiches, sausage rolls, meat pies, cocktail sausages, fruit platters, raw vegetables and dips and things like that. Now, those foods still have a place, but they do have a bit of a stereotype of being a bit of a beige buffet. So sandwiches, pastries, they're all sort of one colour, can be lacking in a variety of nutrients, which is what we've tried to address with our finger food bites here, and also can be a bit dry. So the finger food bites are nutritious meals in cubed form essentially, and we've included a portion of vegetables, a portion of your 5 a day, but the vegetables are cooked and in bite-sized pieces. So this can be helpful for giving variety, vitamins and minerals, and colour on the plate, which is really important. What's great about them as well is they don't cause a mess. So yes, they are what I would call more traditional protein options. So that's salmon in a sort of like a white creamy sauce that you can see on the screen there. But to eat that with your hands, if somebody was living with dementia and had moved on to eating with their hands, they would just get in a big mess, and that wouldn't be dignified for the person, and it wouldn't be pleasant for them, and they probably wouldn't be able to eat as much of the meal as a result of trying to eat in that way. So as I said earlier, I believe this is kind of like a complementary part of the solution alongside other elements that may be suitable for that individual person. It can be really challenging to include classics in the design of a traditional finger food meal option. So that's why we developed the meals essentially. And it's something that we're proud of from an innovation point of view. But really at the core of it's designed to maintain dignity and improve choice, and also improve nutritional intake among people living with dementia. And there's some images of the food on the screen there. And what I'm going to do now is move on to talk a bit about some case studies and finger foods. I've had a bit of a technical error, and one of my lovely slides is missing, but I'm just going to, it was supposed to come before this slide, but I'm just going to try and remember what it said on the slide. Care group that we've been working with, which is a large not-for-profit care group who were working with us when we developed these finger food bite meals. And the feedback that they gave at the point of implementing these meals into their care home was that residents were able to share a balanced, nutritious meal with the rest of the dining room. So what I've picked out here is obviously balanced and nutritious in terms of there being a protein source, one of your 5 a day, and a carbohydrate source, but also with the rest of the dining room, which I think is really key here. So we're addressing the fact that people living with dementia and other certain conditions in a care home setting may feel isolated. They may decide to retreat and eat in their room. That can result in them not eating as much. So that's something that I've really picked out from that piece of feedback. Also, they specifically mentioned minimal mess and no beige buffet. So I've touched on what that looks like in terms of the actual meals. But what I've sort of picked out from here is the ability to help maintain the residents' dignity at that point in time when they started using our finger food bite meals, and addressing the fact that there can be lacking variety, colour, and quality nutrition, as I mentioned on the previous slide. The closing point from this particular customer was that they were now filled with more confidence that the residents will clear their plates. So we know that malnutrition is highly prevalent among people living with dementia, and particularly in a care home setting. So the fact that this particular customer can be filled with more confidence that the residents will clear their plates is incredibly encouraging, and we hope to move on to sort of work with these people more to actually collect data on things like food intake, food record charts, and weight changes over time. And also just highlights what we were hoping to achieve is that it's suitable for people that do want to sit down and eat a traditional meal at the table, but also for that eating on the move. So my second case study I wanted to share with you is around an individual, and I'm a little bit aware of time, got a couple of minutes left. So this case study was shared by a lady who just happened to be a nurse. She was a former nurse, but she was caring for her husband sort of after her career had finished. So she had returned to the UK from Australia for that reason, to care for her father, who had experienced a few strokes. He was in need of care, but not complete care. So he still maintained a level of independence. And the example given here was that he could feed himself. However, as this progressed and over time, he began to struggle using cutlery. So specifically around knowing which piece to put in which hand and how to hold a knife and fork. The daughter being a nurse and being aware of these strategies, she introduced finger foods, but they were sort of like the more traditional finger foods that she was preparing herself. The great thing was that it resulted in her father eating more quickly, and enjoying his meal as he was much less frustrated at this point. She happened to get in contact with us at that point to see if we had any finger food meals. And at the time, we didn't have the cubes that you see in front of you in their complete form. We had a traditional style finger food offering. But as we were developing these particular meals, it was a good time to sort of, get involved. And it was really right in the nick of time. She contacted us at the right time. So what we were able to do is try all these finger food bites with this lady and her father. And the feedback and benefit were that he was receiving a more balanced diet with more vegetables and protein, as she was struggling to provide this with the meals that she was producing herself at home. She found there was no need to intervene and feed him, and his dignity was maintained, as it was felt what she was experiencing before, that she had to intervene and start to feed him because he wasn't able to do that himself. Overall, more enjoyment due to the protein element with sauce, and she referred to the option she was able to provide in the home setting being quite dry and unvaried. And the closing point from this particular individual was, mentally for dad, it's been a huge boost. So that's really just, the absolutely key take home point from this that I took from this case study, was that for this individual, it's been a huge boost, and it's worked for him individually and helped him maintain some independence. So I'm about to finish up on this quick run through of our finger food options, but just want to highlight that what we hope to achieve, and moving forward, we're keen to research more into this area, but we're keen to deliver personalised nutritional care, but as a part of the solution. So obviously at the core of all this, we've got person-centred care. On the screen, we've got all the other bits and pieces that might form a part of the personalised care plan. And finger food, I believe, is a really valuable part. I will stop sharing.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you very much, Emily.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Very appreciative of that. Thanks for that, and for sharing all about finger food, which I think is such a great idea, because you're right about the beige, and this looks a lot more exciting and nutritionally better.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be asked, and thank you very much.